Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unholier podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Smith. And today I sit down with author Catherine Brusk. She tells me about her experience in church and going to a non-denominational church, and then also going to a very strict conservative Christian school, and how the dynamics of the strict Christian school and the more laid back church really affected her growing up, and kind of trying to toe the line between all of those things. And we have a really in-depth conversation about what that does to a person and how they have to kind of be a chameleon in their life and in different social circles, and how that can affect you in your relationships and in your family and so on and so forth. It's a really interesting conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. So let's get started. Welcome, Kathy, to the podcast. It's so good to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am so excited. We actually met through our mutual friend, Marbeth Swarzinski.
Mhm.
And she's an author and you're an author. So you guys have that in common. And obviously, I want to talk about your books and all of that. We'll get to that eventually. But just
Mhm.
to kind of give the listeners a background of who you are, maybe give like just a summary overview initially of who you are, where you're from, and maybe
Mhm.
your background in what religion that you grew up in. And then we'll kind of dive into the details, the fun stuff, right?
Yeah, all the fun stuff. So, Kathy Brusk, I published all mine under Catherine Brusk, so I'm sure many of my readers will know that name and be familiar with that. So, I grew up in a suburb just outside of Kansas City, Kansas, and have lived here a majority of my life. Did a brief stint in Topeka, in the capital of Kansas. It was terrible. I don't recommend it. But um, but yeah, I grew up in a fairly conservative household. I say that I'll go into more detail as I talk about just, the religious trauma that I've experienced. But yeah, I've been married for, oh geez, going on 18 years now. That ages you real fast. I have two kiddos, 13-year-old and 11-year-old, and two cats and a hamster because we really like to put ourselves in awkward situations with bringing predators into our house. Apparently that, just kind of rolls over from the religious trauma, I guess.
Yeah,
Poor
yeah.
hamster.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's hilarious.
yeah. But yeah, so my religious background gets, well, there's my little predators now. Um,
I love it. I have three cats, so no judgment there.
Perfect, perfect,
and
yes.
and two dogs.
Hopefully they don't knock over my plants behind me. That'd be awkward to have to pause and clean up in the middle of it.
That's okay. That's all right. We'll just roll with it.
Yes. So my religious background, I kind of have a mess of everything, to be honest. My parents, started going back to church when I was 2. They decided that, oh, like this is the time starting a family and everything, that we should probably get back into church. And so they joined a very, very small non-denominational church, like met in people's basements, and it exploded throughout our time there. They went from meeting in people's basements to like a small strip mall to a junior high to a high school to buying land to building a huge church to adding on to said building. So it got really big. In that time, my parents felt convicted to take me out of public school and put me in a private Christian school.
How old were
And
you
I
about
was
when
in
that?
4th grade when I started at the Christian school. And I think a lot of that just had to do with, I think it had to do with just fear-based decisions of like there was too much knowledge of different aspects of the world being exposed to me in private school, or sorry, public school. And I agree, as a parent now, like I think it is very easy to get caught up in that fear based of, well, my kids are learning too much too fast.
Sure.
And so I like as an adult, as a parent, have understanding of why they made that decision. The downside to that decision is that there was a lot of stuff that went on in this private Christian school that they thought was safe, and it wasn't. There was a lot being taught that was incredibly misogynistic, and I carried and am still healing from, and still, still find myself like going there where I'm like, no, 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 that's not
Mhm.
right. That's not true. That's not what I want for my life. That's not what I want for my kids' lives. And so it's constantly in that battle of fighting the things that I was taught there about my place as a woman, about my role as a woman, that I still fight to this day. A saving grace in all that is that in high school, within that non-denominational church that my parents had joined, it had gotten so big at that point, and with where we lived, there were three different high schools at the time, and things got very cliquey. So there were definite cliques in the youth group of, well, if you went to Olathe North, this is where you hung out with these people. If you went to Olathe South, you hung out with these people. And going to a small Christian school, I didn't have anyone who I went to church with who also went to the school. And so I felt very excluded in the youth group and had no really close friends, and so
And to be clear, the school wasn't affiliated with the church because a lot
correct.
of times
Yeah.
you have a church.
Yes.
Sometimes they'll have
Yeah.
a Christian school, but this was not the case.
Yeah, well, they did, but my parents just didn't attend.
Okay.
So, and thank God for that.
Yeah. But the school that you did go to was not non-denominational.
Correct. It was of Berean, which is very similar to Baptist in the similar rules. But if you're familiar with the New Testament, then you've probably heard like learn like the Bereans.
Mhm.
It's, I believe, in Acts of just asking questions, which is ironic given how little questions we were told to ask.
They don't want you asking questions. They do not.
No, no,
Yeah.
no.
But it was sort of like the IBLP based Bill
Yes.
Gothard curriculum, correct?
Yes, they used
Okay.
a lot of Bob Jones University books and teachings. They had quite a few Bob Jones University graduates as teachers. Yeah, so it was very much in that, very deep rule centered
Mhm.
controlling.
Yeah. Which is where I went to college. One of
Yes.
the colleges I went to. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we definitely have that rule-based control
Yes.
background in a similar
Yeah.
way of life there in the beginning of our years.
Yeah.
So my saving grace in all that is I left that large non-denominational church and ended up in a Pentecostal charismatic church. Talk about like one side to the
Yeah.
other when it comes
Yeah.
to the Christian realm.
Mhm.
Really don't get any different than, oh no, we don't raise our hands to flopping on the floor in the aisle.
Yes.
But at the same time, it was also a lot of exposure between this this rule-centric way to this, like, we heavily believe in the grace of Jesus. And so it was very eye-opening seeing these two different perspectives. So I have all these rules at school. I have all this freedom at church. And then I have my parents who, very much walk this middle line, whatever, as long as you're obeying our rules, we don't care what you do.
And that's hard for kids
Yes.
to
Yes.
have to figure out, like, okay, what am like you have to almost be a chameleon, right? So you got
Yes.
to be one way at church, you got to be one way at school, you got to be one way at home, and that can be very confusing, especially
Mhm.
when you're going through like puberty and stuff and things are already
Oh,
confusing. It's like I
yes.
can't. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
relate to that for sure.
That is definitely something I have taken into adulthood is I'm very cognizant about the type of personalities I hang out with. And so I will almost match personalities. If someone is more extroverted, I can be very extroverted. If someone is more quiet and shy, then I'm very quiet and shy and I have a hard time but I match. And so it's very awkward. It was very awkward when I realized that, and it really started happening like as different groups of friends converged, and then you're stuck in this, oh my gosh, like, how do I act? Who am I? Not based on how comfortable I'm trying to make other people. Because that is what I spent a majority of my life doing, is how do I make this sector more comfortable? And how do I change myself? Like, and it led to this huge, I don't even know who the heck I am because I've been so busy trying to make sure that everybody else felt comfortable around me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
so
a
yeah,
lot of people listening can resonate with what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it was hard and it's confusing. And when you're already confused because you're a teenager, as you said earlier, like it's like, oh my goodness, I really struggled, and I didn't even realize how much I was struggling. I went to college, ended up leaving that charismatic church due to a, personal situation where I was told I was not good enough to marry someone's son. And that was really interesting because as I was struggling with this, I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I went to this private Christian school. Like I have all this background. Like, how am I not good enough?
And the thing that's weird is like people probably don't even realize, unless you came from a really religious background like we have. Like if you're
Mhm.
just a normal person that grew up and had a normal childhood, they would be like, well, what made you not like good enough for their son? Like what
Right.
was it? Were you like out shoplifting? Were you out like, sleeping with God? Like what in all of those things weren't the truth. Like
Yeah.
you were just a church girl. You were like, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, if you were just a normal church girl, you didn't get into
Yeah.
trouble, nothing like that. It's like,
No. Like,
I know.
the only thing we did that was, like, terrible, and again, I'm doing this with all my church friends, is, like, we broke into public pools in the middle of the night to go swimming. We TP'd each other's houses. I mean,
Yeah,
I was like,
same. Yeah.
whereas and we commonly laughed. So going to this private Christian school, we used to laugh as we watched people graduate and like what they did with their lives is we were like, you either stay in that conservative Christian life or you become a stripper. And there's no in between. Like, it is one or the other. You legit, like, you stay conservative or you legit go the complete opposite route and you become totally, like, immersed in the world. And
Yeah.
so that's really, so it was like I'm in this like weird middle ground that hardly anybody is in because I haven't stayed in this conservative world and I don't really want to become a stripper. And so like what do I do? What do I do? How do I
Yeah.
act? How do I behave? And when I met my husband, this it really hit me a few years into our marriage that I was forcing him to try to be somebody he was not.
Mm.
He is the baby of his family. I am the oldest child. I'm used to having control and making decisions, and he is not. He is along for the ride. Somebody else make the decisions. He will drive, but like beyond
Yeah.
that, don't make him make a decision. And
Was he raised in church at all?
he was not.
Okay,
He was
so
not.
that alone is a very interesting
Yes.
dynamic. So you
Yes.
have the firstborn of your family, the baby of the family on
Mhm.
his side, no religious affiliation on his side, and then you are
Yes.
so it's like you have a lot of dynamics going on there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm sitting there and I reverted back to this conservative Christian viewpoint of my husband's the leader. My husband should be leading. He should be leading me spiritually. Because at this point, my husband had made the decision and come to Christ, but he didn't have any of
He
any
didn't have a baseline.
background. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing. And so as I'm sitting here having been a Christian since I was like 4, like I'm
Mhm.
like, you should be spiritually leading me. And he's like, what? Like, and so it was several years into our marriage before it was like, this is a problem and this is not working. And we have got to get ourselves figured out as I'm trying to like take on this stay-at-home role and forcing him to do everything, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, like, why do you keep handing me all this stuff?" And it was not working, and we really had to work hard in our marriage, a few years into it, to figure out, like, our marriage does not have to look like anybody else's. There is not a set into it has to be this way. And it took a lot for me to mentally break free of my expectations that I didn't even know I had, but were
Mhm.
just taught to me from such a young age that this is what it should look like. And ours does not look like anybody else's marriage now, and we have never been happier. Once we got it all figured out, it was like it clicked, and, we have friends who are like, "You guys never fight." And no, like, not full fights. We communicate, we talk through things. If we just really don't even disagree, because at this point, I'm not forcing him to make decisions that I
Yeah.
disagree with. So,
Yeah.
it's funny just getting to that point and breaking free of some of that trauma I didn't even know I carried.
Oh my gosh. I love this conversation because I think there's so many people who can relate to everything that you're saying. I mean, maybe they didn't marry a spouse that was, the opposite. Like I can relate to that because my husband
Right.
wasn't raised in any religion either.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of nuances that we had to kind of work through and figure out, like you were saying, but I never really thought of that. Like you do grow up with that paradigm of, well, the woman has to be submissive and the man has to be the leader and all of these things. And there were times looking back now that you're saying this that me and my husband, we had like there were times where I was like, I don't know, you make the decision. And he's like, well,
Yep.
no, we are going to make the decision.
Yeah.
And that was really foreign to me. And I felt like, oh my gosh, for the first time, somebody actually cares what my opinion is about
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
But it was almost like I felt guilty a little bit about it. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I shouldn't be like giving my input. Like it's bad. Not bad in the sense that it was like evil, just like it just felt different. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
so I think that when you have the dynamic and you're growing up in religion and you've got these viewpoints that are drilled into your head, these misogynistic viewpoints that like women are less than and men have to be the leaders and the women have to be subservient and basically do whatever their husbands tell them to do, and then you meet somebody who's like, wait a minute, we're a partnership here.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? Okay, I don't even know how to give my opinion. It's like
Yeah.
like I've said before, like, I didn't even know what my opinion was on certain things
Mhm.
for the longest times. Like, I don't even know how I think about this certain thing. I have
Yeah.
to really think about it. I'm going to have to, like, really consider because it was told to me my whole life how to
Yes.
think.
Yeah. And then it's confusing, especially just in my sense, like my husband's the baby, and so he was coming to me in the like first few parts of our marriage of like, "Hey, can I go out and do this?" And I'm like, why are you asking me that? Like, and it like became this really weird situation of feeling like I was parenting him of like, yeah, sure, I can give you permission to go hang out with your buddies. Like, why are you asking me this? Like, you're the guy. Shouldn't you be telling me that that's what you're going to do? And so he
Isn't
had to
that
come.
like every guy's dream though to like
Right.
have a wife that's like, yeah, you're good. I'm not your mommy. Go do what you want.
Yeah. So, but it was weird for him because he was so used to having to ask for permission, being the baby for everything.
Oh,
And so, like,
yes.
he had to grow out of that weird baby concept of like, there's there's a different way you phrase things when you are communicating with your partner, with your spouse. I want to go do this, and we have like a full like writing calendar that we look at that now that's like, where he'll go and look and then he'll come to me and be like, "Hey, we don't have anything on the calendar. I'm getting together with the guys this night." And I'm like, "Cool." And now it's like a totally different way of communicating versus him coming and being like, "Can I go do this?" And I'm like, shouldn't I be asking you if I can do things? Like
Yeah.
it was insane the first few years of our marriage. Like that's the only way to put it is there were so many fights about just stupid stuff because we didn't know, I have one side, he has a totally different way of looking at things and we're both bringing this trauma into our marriage that we don't even know that we have.
Yeah. So how did you guys work through that? Did you guys go to counseling or did you guys just like really hash it out on your own?
We really did just hash it out on our own. A lot of it was just growth and me coming to the realization of I didn't realize I was carrying all this trauma. So I had mentioned that we did a brief stint in Topeka. So my husband got a job in Topeka right after we got married, like a few months after. So we moved and we lived there for 2 years. And so not only are we newly married and trying to figure out all this communication aspect of marriage, but we are completely isolated and 2 hours from anybody we know. We literally only had each other and, a few coworkers, that, like, we barely know from his job, and so it was very isolating, and we were kind of stuck in this, you only have each other, so you have to work through these fights and you have to deal with it. And it was a lot, and then when we moved back, this is an interesting part of my story is so we moved back and the town that we live in it's big, but like any big town, it's also very small, and you run into people like, I don't go to the grocery store unless I have my face on,
Same.
Um, and I started running into people from my past, I can't go out to eat without running into someone from the private Christian school. I can't go to the grocery store without running into someone from the Pentecostal church, that I've been in. And I start running into all these people and I start realizing I am so hurt. And I just felt so just less than. And it was facing that really got me to a point of like, how do I deal with all of these feelings? And I had always been a writer. I, spent all of junior high not paying attention to math class and writing stories in my notebook. and And a friend of mine at that time reached out to me and she's like, and we've been friends since kindergarten, like forever. And she reached out and she's like, "Hey, I'm writing this book. Would you mind reading it and telling me what you think?" And I was like, "Man, I should write a book." And so it became this moment of like, I'm gonna write this character of dealing with how do you get past feeling less than worthy. And,
Mhm.
so that was really my big breakthrough was starting to write and really putting myself on the pages of I'm gonna put this character in a similar situation to what I have lived and all the emotions that came from it, and how does she heal from it? How does she get past it? How does she deal with all this trauma? And, so that's what really started my writing journey was just I need to heal, and that was the only concept that I could think of to use was writing. And so that was what really started things off and really started my journey of deconstructing all the unhealthy, quoted, miscontext biblical ideas that I had been taught. Was stripping all those down. And it has been years. I mean, it has been a good oh gosh, 12 years that I have slowly just started stripping away all the unhealthiness that was built up. And it's one of those things, people talk about like their deconstruction journeys. And it's like, I don't think I will ever be through mine,
No.
like ever. Like,
Mm.
I always want to examine and look closely at what I believe and what I think. And I'm finally to the point where I'm like, it's okay not to know. And
Mhm.
it's okay to not ever know as long as I continue to question. And I
Mhm.
don't ever want to get to a point where I believe something someone says just because they're in a place of authority. I
Mhm.
always want to question. And so that's like
Yes.
the point that I'm at right now is I never want to stop growing and I always want to question.
Mhm. I think it's a really important conversation to have about deconstruction and healing because, I always say like healing really is a journey. It's not something that you arrive at. There could be times where I feel like, I'm doing pretty good. I'm not like really affected by much, if nothing really triggers me anymore, and then something will happen.
Yes.
and it'll be the craziest thing. And you're just kind of, it kind of slaps you across the face. You're like, and my husband will check, he'll check me because he'll be like, why are you reacting this way? Like, what is triggering you that you're getting so upset about this thing that is really insignificant?
Right.
And then you have to, like, I reflect and I think, like, is this from my upbringing? And why am I judging this person right now? Why am I so upset about this situation or this thing? And then it reminds me, like, hey, you are still on this journey. You're going to be on this journey for the rest of your life. And it's like you said, just peeling back the layers. It's like an onion. I mean, you're literally like just going, okay, this, that, and we talked about purity culture too. Like when
Right.
you and I talked on the phone, and that was a big thing. That was a big thing for me, was the purity culture thing. In fact, somebody just sent me from a church I grew up with. I grew up with them at my dad's church, and they just sent me this documentary, a link to this documentary of Josh Harris, I Kiss Dating Goodbye. Well, he now has made a documentary basically talking to the people who were affected deeply by his book and the purity culture. And so he's kind of like apologizing. He sort of went on this like apology tour, like, hey guys, I'm sorry if I ruined your life.
Yeah.
Because it really affected us in so many different ways growing up, but it's also affected me personally, the purity culture, just even with like being intimate with my husband and feeling like, is this okay to do? Is this like, in the beginning, not knowing that it's okay, it's your husband, you're doing this within, the four walls of marriage, and
Mhm.
it's not something that you should even judge yourself about or question. Just do what you guys consent to do together.
Right.
And but you have this. Even when I was in my first marriage, I had no concept of sex, because it was like, sex is off limits, sex is bad until marriage, and then you can do it,
Mhm.
and then it's like the wedding night and nobody knows what to do.
Yes. No clue. No
Yeah.
clue.
So I still, even to this day, there are times where I'm still like peeling back those layers and
Mhm.
what traumatized me, and not even realize like certain things that actually did traumatize me as a kid or a teenager or as a
Yeah.
young adult within the concept of religion and the aspects of those paradigms that I was given and handed down to me. And those are really, I mean, a lot of it isn't biblical.
Yeah.
It's just things that have been made up. And I think a lot of it's even cultural, that was made up from like the 40s and 50s, that were just passed down, and it never went past that time period. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. 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 It's the whole purity culture concept really did a number on me. Like, and what was funny is like, I got that coming from school. Like, and I did the whole like, I want the purity ring. I read I Kiss Dating Goodbye. Like I was not. So my parents had always told me like you can start dating when you're 16. Like before that, like just don't bother. And I was so into it, like, I was like, "Oh, no, 16 is way too young," because I'm reading these books going, "Oh, well, if I only date in order to find a future husband, then what's the point in doing it at 16? I can't even get married until I'm 18." Like, and, like, I know, like, legally, some states say 17, but, like, I was still gonna like, I graduated high school at 17, so, like, there's no way
yeah.
that was gonna happen. So I was like, "So there's no point." So I was like, "I'm not gonna date till I'm 18," and I didn't even start dating until 19.
Hmm.
Um, and, it was stupid. I had no clue what I was doing. I know, talked a little bit about just my experience with, the sex talk that I got, was my mom read a Dr. James Dobson book, and when it got to the chapter discussing sex, because the whole book was about adolescence and growing up. The sex chapter, we put paper bags with holes cut out for our eyes. We put those paper bags over our heads so she wouldn't have to look at me when she read this book. And again, I
See,
think
that's so crazy to me, because I can't imagine, like, see, if I was going to be that, if, and also like so many things going through my head right now, but it's
Yes.
like if I was going to be that like embarrassed or nervous to talk to my child about sex, I would just be like, honey, here's a book. I
A
put the
book.
bookmark in the chapter that I need you to read. And then if you have any questions about it, like we can talk. But if you don't, that's cool too. Like everything you need to know right in this little chapter, and give it back to me when you're done. Like, why
Yeah.
you gotta put a
Yeah.
bag over your head? Like, that in and of itself is like, what kind of message is that sending you?
It was a shameful message, and,
Yeah.
like, my mom will fully admit that now, like, she
Yeah.
understands, and the funny thing was, like, so my sister is 6 years younger than me, she just left the book on my sister's bed, like, she was like, "Not touching
Yeah.
that with a 10-foot pole," like, so she learned her lesson, like, that doesn't work,
Yeah.
but, like, when you're getting that whole conservative Christian concept, and it was one of those, like, my mom was somewhat supportive of it, like, she didn't want us to, go crazy. Obviously, she made the decision to put us in this Christian school. Like, she was afraid of us going nuts, essentially. And, you just get to this point where you're hearing all of this, and then suddenly, like, in my case, I made a mistake like before marriage and slept with somebody. And I went to my mom and I was like, this whole like crying, like, I have to give you back my purity ring. And she was like, she legit was like, I don't care. And I'm like, what? Because at that point, I'm still like,
Yeah.
but mom, like, why hold me to these standards that you
Yeah.
don't even care? And so
Mhm.
that was, again, just another confusing concept of like, I'm like, oh, it didn't really matter to you. And she's like, I just wanted you to wait till you were old enough to take responsibility
Mhm.
in case something happened, in case you ended up pregnant, like whatever. Like, and it's like, oh, and but it's just so funny, just my experience and where that's brought me to as a parent is totally different. And, we've had, the sex talk is not just one talk with our kids. It is
Yeah.
a continuous conversation. It is something new came up, somebody's doing something on TikTok. Well, now we need to have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
It's totally different, but it's also very open because I don't want my kids to have shame around it because I did carry so much shame. I carried shame around losing my virginity before I was married. And then, I had one partner before I got married and then got married. And there was still so much shame around. But what actually changed? I signed a piece of paper and suddenly it's supposed to make sex okay. I didn't understand it. I
Mhm.
still, I guess I just don't. I don't understand what the purity culture, what their sole goal was,
Mhm.
and why they pushed that so heavily and why they shamed so many people over it. Um,
Mhm.
because it's still, as you said, like a weird concept of like mentally pushing yourself past that, oh, but I'm doing something wrong. No, I'm not. Like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
married, like, we're allowed to explore each other and to have fun with each other, and that's what sex is. It's not it's this intimate, fun, enjoyable thing between 2 consenting adults. It's not something that I should be ashamed of.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it really is crazy. And I wish that more parents could have these healthy conversations with their kids, especially kids in a religious culture, because they're not able to have those conversations. And parents are even ashamed to have those conversations with their kids. And I wish it wasn't like that, but unfortunately it is. And
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that the listeners are kind of taking note and saying, okay, note to self, do not put a paper bag with holes for eyes. For my head
Please
when I'm
don't.
talking like this.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
It might send the wrong message, guys. I'm just saying. It might make your kid afraid to have sex.
I only get my groceries in plastic bags now, guys. I mean, paper bags, I'm just, a little
Yeah.
terrified of now.
Who knew you could have trauma around a paper bag?
No, right? Like, and by all means, my mom and I laugh about it a ton now, like,
Yeah.
turned into this funny thing, like, now that
Yeah.
I've figured it out, but, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely one of those, like, "Okay, this is something shameful." Yeah, and it's hard to mentally move past that as an adult even, so
Sure, yeah. I love that you're able to really look introspectively and just be like, hey, you know what? I'm still working on stuff and there are still things that affect me. And I'm going to delve into what the reasons are. Maybe examine myself and say, why is this affecting me? Why do I feel this way? Why am I, reacting this way to something? I mean, I literally just talked to my husband the other day. We talk about it all the time actually, but he was on the last episode that aired and we talked about music. And again, he didn't grow up in church and we started going to this one church and they had a little bit more like modernized Christian music and then I have like friends that go to non-denominational church that has like they have like rock band and like fog machines and lights and I don't like that. Like
Mhm.
I'll go to a rock concert all day long, but if I go into a church, I don't want to feel like a rock concert. It just feels weird to me.
Mhm.
And I'm saying this to him and I'm like, I don't know if it's just like because how I was raised or whatever. And he's like, yeah, it is because there's a lot of people who don't, it's not affecting them.
Yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
going and that's their form of worship and they're enjoying it and it's your upbringing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again, it's like even something as stupid as that, I have to just be like, okay, Jen, just stop. Like, don't judge it. Just
Yeah,
it's the way that some people worship, and that's okay.
yeah,
They don't all have to be super serious and reading out of a hymn book and only a piano or an organ can be the only instrument on the platform. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's kind of
yeah, and that's, like, exactly, like, I mean, so the Christian school, it was reading hymns, a cappella type thing,
yes.
where I've been to churches who continued that practice, and then the non-denominational church got, bigger and added more as time went, so that was a very, like, good introduction because it just kind of flowed and got more and more extravagant as time went on, so I didn't have that jolting type, scenario that you had, but it's interesting because, like, the more, I grow and the more I discover, and it's like I've realized, like, I do have certain likes of what I do enjoy with worship music, and that's, if our family ever decides to step back into church again, like, that's something that it will affect the decisions that I make, like, because
Yeah.
I've dealt with the, like, flashing lights in my face, like, "Okay, I'm trying to focus on Jesus and you're blinding me,"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then I
Yeah.
don't want the acapella side either because that's too
Yeah.
triggering in the, like, yeah, I lived too many years singing "Onward Christian Soldiers" every Friday during chapel, like like, can't do that anymore, I'm instantly triggered by that song. Uh,
Yes. Same.
so
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so it's just interesting just the variety, and especially, like, there was several years the young man who I was not good enough for was a musician, and I grew a lot musically having a friendship with him, and for a very long while, like, I couldn't even listen to music when things dissolved with that relationship, and so it's interesting just even sometimes certain songs just that I listen to with him or, it will still just take me instantly back to a moment where it is hard to pull yourself out of that trigger and out of that instant, like, frustration and feeling not good enough, and it's very interesting just how much music really does affect your psyche. And I mean, and obviously there are reasons. There are music therapists for a reason.
Yes.
Like it's like music can have a huge impact in your brain and how, your emotions and your feelings, reflect the song.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting. And it plays to your emotions too. So I don't know. I was raised in a church where you weren't allowed to raise your hands. My dad would always say, the Bible says, lift up holy hands. And nobody has holy hands. So we shouldn't lift up our hands. Okay. All right. They would lift their hands up if they had a Bible in their hand. You could wave the Bible
Oh,
around
mm.
that or a handkerchief, but you couldn't like actually lift like an empty hand.
So it probably had to be like a white handkerchief,
It
white,
had to
right?
be a white
Like
handkerchief. Yeah.
your
Like
handkerchief.
I surrender, God, I surrender, waving it, surrendering. Yeah. Yeah, so we had that, and that was about the extent of our, waving of the hands. And then
Yes.
I go to this other church, and they're on the platform, closing their eyes and raising their hands
Mhm,
up, and all this,
mhm.
and it just felt, I don't know, cringe to me. And I know that sounds super judgmental. It just felt like it felt production-y to me,
Yes.
and
Yes.
fake. So that just like turned me off. I don't
Mhm.
know. So
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Like if you ever do, and my husband and I don't go to church anymore either, but like
Mhm.
same, like if you ever do go to church, you'd want to feel like, especially the worship, the music part of it, you want to feel comfortable. You don't want to feel like, oh, this is like uncomfortable and cringy. I get
Yeah.
it. I get
Yeah.
it. If you ever find the unicorn church, let me know.
Oh yeah, I'll let you know. I I was having a discussion with a close friend who is actually a pastor's kid, and we were talking about just like the concept of is there such thing as a healthy church? And having all the experience that I have and seeing all these different denominations, like right now with what the American culture has turned church into, like I don't see that. I
Yeah.
don't, and obviously no church is perfect. We're, filled with all sorts of different people with
Yeah.
different triggers and different backgrounds but can you have a healthy staff? And that's come down to I have seen behind the curtain as far as working on a staff. I worked for a non-denominational church for 2 years, and man, it would take a lot for me to be convinced that there is a healthy staff, running a church. It would take,
Yeah.
but like right now, it's I don't know. People are like, oh, you need to get back into church. You need to get back into church, and I hear that all the time. And what's funny is like I read the Bible every day, study the Bible every day, not just read it is actually one of my biggest pet peeves to hear people, well, just read your Bible. Just read your Bible. I'm like, study your Bible.
Yeah.
Study that word. Consider the context, consider the history, consider the culture, consider it all because you can't just read it at face value. Um, I'm in God's word every day. I talk to God every day. Like I feel closer to God now outside of the church than I do in. And that is a problem in America. And that
Yeah.
like I can't speak for the rest of the world because I've only ever lived here. But I just foresee it as a massive issue. And I wish I had the answers to fix it. I wish that we could create a healthy church, but I don't know what that looks like. But I do think it is a lot closer to, what Paul was studying in the books of Acts with, home churches and that's like one thing is, we're still involved in a small group. We still meet just about every week to study the Bible together, and it is fantastic. And again, I learn more in that setting than I do at a church that's going to stand up and just quote the whole like Jesus loves you. Like
Yeah.
that I want deeper things. I need to know
Yeah.
the Greek. I need to know the
Right.
Hebrew. I want to know the deep stuff. I want to know what's going on. And it finally came down to like, I have to do that for myself. If I want to know it, I have to do it for myself. I can't rely on other people to do it for me.
Right. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Kathy, because there are people, even myself, who are not in church but still have a relationship with God, and really, in many aspects, feel closer not being in church, because we got to the point towards the end of our time in the church that we were going to where we would go and then we'd get in the car and we would just complain the whole way home.
Yep.
Like, and then finally we looked at each other, we're like, what are we even doing? What is the point? If we're so unhappy, and it wasn't just one thing. It was like you said, we had seen behind the curtain, we had gotten very involved, and there was just things that we just didn't agree with. It wasn't anything like terrible or bad or like, controversial or anything crazy, but it was just things that we just didn't agree with and we weren't comfortable with. And so it was like, well, what is the point? What are we doing? Like, we don't have to be church members or attend a church in order to have a relationship with God. It's a personal relationship. So
Yeah.
let's just focus on that. And we've been happy doing that.
Yeah.
I'm a lot happier. And I know my husband is not going to a church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish it was more socially acceptable to walk into a church and just
Hmm.
enjoy the service for what it is and then go to a different one the next week. But instead, churches have become all about this. Well, like you have to be members or, we want to keep them at ours and not theirs. And it's turned into this like business model of like,
Yes.
well, come to ours, not theirs. And I don't like that. Like I would love to just to be able to walk into any church and clearly state, I'm just here for the day. Don't pressure me to do anything. But like, we went through a series of several churches that when we left ours and we left ours right when COVID happened. And so, obviously no churches were meeting for a while. And so then when we finally started to feel comfortable enough to go in, because both myself and my son are high risk. And so it took us a while to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but we started church shopping and every single one, it was like, you're not doing things correctly. Like you have to come up and take communion. Like I'm not coming up to take communion at a church that I don't know with people that I
Hmm.
don't know. I'm not feeling safe anyway. I'm not going to go up there and touch a bunch of stuff that everyone else has had
Right.
their hands
Yeah.
on. I might get COVID. But
Yeah.
like, it's, I just wish it was more understanding and accepting to be like, you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. You can stay in your seat. Instead, it's like the ushers looking at me like, what do you mean you don't want to get up and have communion? Like, it's like, I don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's a hard push for churches to not try to push membership and participation and volunteering. And it, it's a business. They're
It
trying to run a
is.
business. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also they want the numbers and more
Mhm.
importantly, they want the tithe and offerings.
Yes, 100%. Again, this last church that we left, I have never seen anything so numbers based
Mhm.
in my life. And it kind of irritates me that we ended up as a number. Like
Yep.
so like my husband got baptized there and so it's like he's a number now. He will always be
Yeah.
a number that they brag about. And it was really actually honestly after his baptism that things like I was like, you baptized him, and then what did you do to follow up with him spiritually?
Mhm.
There was no follow up. There was no, hey, we want to
That's right.
know how you're doing. What do you
Yeah.
need help with? It was just, oh, no, we baptized you. Good luck. It was so cold and just non relational. And that was really, I think, the thing that sparked the first bit of this is not right and this is not okay. And then it just progressively got worse from there. So,
Yeah.
uh,
So how has that affected him in his like Christian walk at this point? Like it has he is he turned off by it or because I mean, being like a young Christian, not growing up in that, my husband can totally relate to this. Same type of thing happened to him.
yeah, I think he just did not have any expectations. So he commonly says like he doesn't really carry much church hurt or church trauma because he wasn't aware that like when you lead someone to Christ, when you baptize them, like there should be a relationship there.
Yeah.
And so he was just like, oh no, I stood up and I spontaneously got baptized one Sunday, and I'm not surprised at all that no one followed up with me. Whereas I'm like mortified that like no one
Same.
follows up
Yeah.
with you. Like, so I think that was kind of a benefit for him to not have that church history, church background, because he just didn't know to have that trauma. His only frustration is just, the relationships that we lost when we
Yeah.
left said church.
Yeah.
So it was more, he looks at it more individual wise of like we left and suddenly this person stopped talking to me and that person sucks. Versus I agree, but I'm also look at the overall context of the church and there are things where I'm like, okay, well, at least they weren't like chasing us down, demanding that we come back. I mean, they're at least letting go of that in the sense of we can control where you go.
But
But
isn't that interesting though? Because like the same thing happened to us when we left the church. Like we lost pretty much our all of our friendships. Like nobody talks to us anymore, and we're like, why?
yeah, yeah, it's
Why?
not a
We didn't
gang.
do
Like
anything. Yeah,
we can still be friends.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like, we were in a club together
Mhm.
and it's members only,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is well, and I think part of it too is I've been very outspoken about the red flags that I saw and been very honest with people who have asked, like this is what I saw, this is what needs to change. And I think, whereas I'll get like, oh yeah, I agree, like you agree, but you won't do anything to changing it, you still keep attending.
Mm,
So how are you changing the status quo by still continuing to stay there and not change anything?
mhm.
I think that's like my biggest takeaway from, the very few people who we at least still talk to. And again, that's like a handful of people.
Yeah.
And it certainly isn't the really deep relationships that I had there that I thought were going to last a lifetime that
Yeah.
did.
And that is a concept that I think that is very unfortunately common when you're in a church setting and then you leave. People need to understand a lot of times you're losing an entire community,
Yes.
and then those are people that and you've grown with, you've had babies together and you've
Mhm.
gone through life together and all of the things, and then all of a sudden they're not there, and you
Yeah.
you think like they're going to be friends for life, or they're going to be with me, in my life, even if I move or if I leave the church or whatever. But then that's not the case. And it's very disappointing. It's like,
Yeah.
my husband and I, we definitely have those questions too. We wonder why. Cause it's like, it was our friendship not more than just church. I don't get it. So yeah, it's tough. It's like you lose a lot of relationships. You lose that community. I think that's the thing that I miss the most
Yes.
about going to church, is having that community. And then I think to myself, was I just disillusioned into thinking that these were real relationships and real friendships?
Yeah.
And then that's another layer again that I'm having
Mhm.
to like process and deconstruct from. I tell my husband, I'm like, not only did I deconstruct from like Christianity, like how I was raised in that
Mhm.
sect of Christianity, but I also had to deconstruct and am still deconstructing from certain people that I thought were
Yes.
my friends or family
Yeah.
members that I thought were ride or die. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and then I'm also, you add on to the fact that, like you said, you were calling out red flags. I'm
Mhm.
doing the same here with this podcast. It's like as soon as I started the podcast, it's like, man, I got blocked from certain people that
Yep.
I was friends with. And it's like, wow, I
Yeah.
never even had a conversation with them about any of this stuff. Like, then they're just blocking me and they're gone. And it's
Mhm.
almost like we never even had a friendship. It's really the craziest thing.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, I actually Rachel held Rachel held Ada Evans Rachel held Evans. She wrote a book called Searching for Sunday about her and her husband coming out of a church. And she had this sentence in it that just struck me so deeply. They were driving home from, they had walked out of the church and said, "That's it, we're done." And they're driving home. And she says she just started bawling. And she's like, "Who's going to bring me casseroles when I'm sick or when I lose a loved one?" Like, and that concept is just so heavy because, like, we recently lost my brother-in-law a couple of years ago, and this was after it was a few years even before that we had left this church. And I was very close to, several members of the staff, obviously being on staff for several years, and they had, walked with us in this journey of, losing my brother-in-law was like a 10-year long process. And, they had walked through us walked with us through losing him. And,
Mhm.
we left the church. A few years later, he dies. And it was very interesting to see, obviously we had a few people who we still had in contact who showed up, and we are so grateful for them. They provided meals and stuff. But these people who I genuinely like prayed with every day, like for my brother-in-law to like get his head on straight and change his life around. And they didn't show up. And it's like, I know you see this Facebook post. I know you see, and and you're just going to ignore the fact that we spent hours praying together for this man and now he's gone and you're just going to ignore it. I was just floored that certain people within that church family that I had created, even though I had left, didn't push the hurt and, frustration aside to be like, I'm going to show up for you. So, yeah, that was painful because, like, by all means, if they had, like, lost their wife or whatever, like, I'd be showing up with a casserole 100%. I don't care that you lied to me. I don't care what you did. I don't, like, I don't care. You've lost someone, and I genuinely cared about you when we had a relationship, and I'm still gonna show up for you because none of that matters when you need support. So it's I don't know, it's just I don't know if it's just different priorities or what it is, but that was very eye-opening to see just who showed up and who didn't out of that church community during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is strange, isn't it? Because, like you said, it is a church family, right? And so when you're in the church, you do get a lot of that support.
Yeah.
Um, but then when you leave, it's like it's like a ghost town. It's like nobody's there. Nobody's there. It's like, where'd everyone go? And it's like you said, they see the post on social media.
Yeah.
It's like I can see who sees the post on social media if I'm posting something, but
Mhm.
they don't comment, they don't like, they don't
Yeah.
interact. It's
Yeah.
like, well, you know what I'm going through. Do you
Yeah.
acted like you cared when I went to the church, and now you
Right.
don't, that I'm not going to the church? Like, that's all, was that all the relationship was about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
I think the big takeaway, like, for me has just been, like, making sure that I'm following up and not being hypocritical myself, because I feel like that's very hypocritical, and it's like, I wanna make sure that nobody ever feels that way about me, that I'm still gonna show up no matter what, even if I disagree with you. Like, we're all still human beings, and we're all still trying to do our best here, at least most of us. Uh, and,
yeah.
like, I don't ever wanna be that person that's just like, "That's too bad," and then just ignores it. I wanna show up even when it hurts and even when it's painful.
Yeah. So everyone continue to bring casseroles to each
Yeah.
other, whether
We
your
need all the
friends are in
casseroles,
or out
guys.
of church.
Yes, take casseroles.
It's a staple. Just bring the
Yes,
casserole, for crying
yes,
out loud.
yes. We all need casseroles to get through life. And chocolate, I mean.
Yes, casseroles and chocolate, and if you know me, a bottle of wine helps too.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kathy, let's get into your books. You are an author. I would
Yeah,
love for the listeners to hear about your books. So you have 6 books in total,
yeah,
correct? You have
yeah.
a 5-book series called the Finding Faith series.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the 6th book. So let's go with the first one.
'Kay. So the first book of the series is called What Love Washed Up. It's actually last day, ebook's on sale today.
Nice.
Not that
So
that's gonna be a big deal because
a
this
little, a
podcast won't come
little,
out today.
a little Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal
Yes,
going on.
yes,
So okay, cool.
yeah. I typically do run a Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale, so, next year, look for that if you want it on sale. But so I actually wrote What Love Washed Up second, which gets a little confusing. So I wrote the second book in the series first, and it's called What Grace Washed Up, and it originated from that hurt and pain of not feeling worthy because I was told I was not good enough to marry a boy. And, I took the main character through a lot more than what I endured. in that situation, but I really wanted to dive into those powerful feelings of what do you do when you're told you're not worthy and how do you rediscover yourself? The character literally carries around a notebook in which she has a page of likes and then another page of dislikes because she is legit taking it down to the bare minimum and trying to figure out what she likes and dislikes for herself. I finished writing that book and was kind of like, okay, I accomplished this. What do I do with this? And at the time, we had joined that church that we last ended our last church that we were a part of. And it's a good sized church, multiple campuses, and we knew from experience like you have to get involved in small groups, right? Otherwise you're never going to create any type of relationship at these large churches. So we
Mm.
had joined a small group and the leaders, the wife of them or the wife who is the leader came to me and was like, "Hey, I'm taking these human trafficking classes through school. We're having all these guest speakers for the month of April. Why don't you come?" And it's like, obviously, first response is like, no, are you insane? Why would anyone want to take a human trafficking class? That sounds terrible.
Right.
But here I am, brand new to this church, to this small group, trying to generate relationships. And I was like, sure, I'll
Yeah.
go. Um, First,
Sounds like a fun Thursday
yeah,
night. Count me in.
I'm gonna love spending my Thursday nights doing this. Um, Totally had my heart completely ripped out. And in this class, there was a man speaking about his work in foster care and, the human trafficking victims that they get in foster care. And he was trying not to use names for for the entire thing, because obviously some of these kids still lived, in his household and stuff, but he slipped and he noted that one of his foster children's name was Bree, and Bree is the name of my main character in this book, in What Grace Washed Up, the book I had just finished. And so as I'm bawling all the way home on the highway, don't recommend, not very safe. I was just like, what am I supposed to do with this? And God's like, I've like set it all up, Kathy. This needs to be the next story. And so it was like, okay. And I already had all the characters laid out because my main male character had family members. And so, God was just like, this is Jesse's character. This is Jesse's story. You need to tell Jesse's story. And whereas it took me 5 years to get out all the emotions around What Grace Washed Up because it was so raw and so much of my own emotions on a page, it took me 4 months to get out What Love Washed Up as my first edit. It was just there. Like it was
Wow.
I wrote nonstop, driving down the road, I'm writing like
Yeah.
in the passenger seat. In the
Yeah. Yeah. Your voice memoing yourself.
Yes. Yes, like, I mean, I
She
wrote
was
and wrote
hands
and wrote.
free, everyone. She wasn't driving and
Yes,
texting or
yes, I
like,
was not texting, driving. I was making my husband drive and
yeah.
writing in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
Um, and I was doing on top of writing, like, doing all this research of how do I write a story about this? Like, this is a brand new concept for me. Like, human trafficking is not something that is widely discussed. Obviously, we're getting better and better at discussing what goes on, I feel like, as a society, but it's still just not widely known. And it's especially not widely known in Christian circles because
Mhm.
I don't know why, but
Because they think that it doesn't happen
right,
in the church or in Christian circles.
right,
They think, well, I could never do that, so the people around
yeah.
me could never do that, which
Right,
is
is
not
not
the case.
true. You're paying any attention to news
Yeah,
articles nowadays, it is
exactly.
not true. Yeah, so wrote that one, and then the series, just kind of continued from there. My 3rd book, What Strength Washed Up, continues with one of the last brother. There's 3 brothers, so the first 3 books cover the first 3 brothers, and it dives into marriage reconciliation and special needs parenting, which is huge in my life. My son is visually impaired. So there is a visually impaired character, a daughter for the main characters, and about their life and how to continue to work at your marriage at the same time while having all of this going on with your kids and your schedules and work. And, you just have everything going on. And how do you prioritize your marriage in that? So it really focuses on the marriage and special needs parenting aspect.
Mhm.
And then the fourth book actually goes to, it's called What Hope Washed Up. And it goes to the, the woman who is human trafficked, who is sex trafficked. It's about her sister. And it's addressing the fact that just because it doesn't happen to you does not mean that you don't carry trauma.
Right.
And it really focuses on lamenting what happened to you and that it's okay, even if comparison, what happened to you is not as bad as what happened to her, you still need space to deal with your trauma. And
Mhm.
that's okay, and it's okay to hold that space. So it really focuses on that, and just the concept of lamenting and dealing with your feelings because we just all like to stuff it all down and we don't like to deal with
Right.
it. And then the last book has all the characters come together much later on. Actually, all the main characters at this point are grandparents, and it is about losing the matriarch of the family and how to deal with loss. And each chapter is a different child or grandchild's perspective, and they're all dealing with loss a completely different way. And it's I tried to write it in a way that like grief is not linear and there's so many different phases, and you kind of feel like a teenager where you're dealing with all sorts of different new hormones, and that's what grief is. Like you're dealing with all these different aspects. And so my goal was that you could see yourself and your grief process in every single one of these characters and how they are dealing with losing their mother or their grandmother. So yeah, so that kind of takes you through the five books in the series.
Yeah. And then you have a sixth book too, correct?
Yes, yes. I do have a sixth book. I just released it a couple of years ago, and it is controversial.
Ooh, I love
Yeah.
that.
So it is about a megachurch brought on by my own experience. Probably out of all my characters, this is the one who I relate to the most, as I went ahead and gave her the past that I carry of growing up in this very conservative Christian school. And she has since then become a staff member for a mega church that is huge. And she deals a lot with pride in that. Well, like, I went to this school and now I work for this church and I'm just doing all the right things. And on paper, I look great. And she really struggles with that. And then in turn, a pastor gets hired who was her high school bully. I dealt with this very personally at the Christian school I grew up with, where you get picked on, you get bullied, you could make a whole list of just if you have experienced bullying, you have experienced it all. The issue with coming from a conservative Christian school is that, like a majority of those guys then decide to come become pastors.
Hmm.
And that is a lot when you have seen how they've treated other people, and then to be like, and you're a pastor now? Like, so it comes from a very real place of me struggling with that. And so in the book, this pastor gets hired at her church that she is currently on staff for. And so she is dealing with this concept of forgiveness. And at the same time, I wanted to also show that there are people who are going to do the work, who are going to heal, who are going to reset what they were taught and realize that it was terrible, and they were going to push forward. And this is the case with Nick, is he has done the hard work. He has changed. But the pastor of the church, the lead pastor of the church that they work for, has not. And he is incredibly misogynistic, and he is rude, and he thinks he knows it all, and he is controlling. And so it's about Anna really having to look at individuals for what fruit they are bearing and realizing that Nick has done the work and he is bearing good fruit, but Dan has not. And so how do you work on forgiveness for Nick at the same time while being bullied and spiritually abused by not only the lead pastor, but your boss?
Mm.
And so it really takes those conflicts and puts it out there. And at the same time, it's incredibly controversial in the conservative Christian circles, as this is a mega church. I have a female pastor on staff. That does not hit well with a couple of readers, and that's
Right.
fine. But that's also the reality that we are in now, is that mega pastors, or sorry, mega churches do have women pastors. And
Yeah.
so
Have
yeah,
people said stuff in your reviews about that?
oh yes. Oh yes. Yes.
Come on, guys. I
Yep.
mean,
Yep. It's 2025, but no,
I can't.
they're still dealing with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well,
So
I think all six of those books sound amazing. I have a nice little bookshelf over here. I'd like to line them all up and put them all on there. So if anyone's interested in getting your books, how can they find them?
So I published through Amazon. I am self-published. And so I did enroll in the Kindle Unlimited program. So if you are subscribed to Kindle Unlimited, you can read as part of your subscription, or you can download the Kindle app and purchase the ebooks. That's available on any smart device that you have, whether you don't have to have like an actual Kindle. You can just get the app on your phone.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to
Yeah, I
know.
can. So let me pull up if you can see.
Oh,
There
so
we
you just
go.
have
So
the
there's,
app.
yep, there's the app, and you can pull it up, and there's the book.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
So thank you. So yeah,
Oh my gosh,
super,
that's awesome.
super
Okay.
easy. You can yeah, you don't have to have a Kindle. It's yeah. So I spend entirely way too much money on books.
Yeah, and if
Because
and if they want the actual physical book, they can also get that as well.
yes, they can get that, and that's available on Amazon as well. Right now, half the series, well, the whole series is available in paperback. Right now, only half the series is available in hardback because that's just a fun situation.
Well, it's got to be expensive too
Yes,
to produce a bunch of hard copy hardback books. I mean, it's
yes.
going to be more
And
expensive than paperback.
yeah, and like my goal is to eventually have audio copies. Obviously, with having a low vision son, my son is an audiobook fiend. That's how he learns. All of his stuff is read because he has enough vision, he can read large print, but he also has fine motor skills, so Braille was not an option for him. So he's an audio learner, and so I would love to put out audio books, but that's expensive.
Yeah.
So, but the nice thing is I do have it enabled with, if you have a smart device, like an Echo speaker, and you have the Kindle app, you can actually ask the Echo speaker to read it to you. It's the
Wow.
annoying computer voice, but at least it's still being read. So that is
Yeah.
a cool concept that they have.
It really is. So, if people are interested in following you on social media, where can they find you?
Yes. So I am on Instagram and Facebook and Threads
Okay. At
at Catherine Brusk.
okay, perfect.
That's
Awesome.
the name. Kept it simple.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this episode, Kathy, is there anything that you want the listeners to really take away? Just like a final thought for anyone that's listening, whether they're struggling in their spiritual journey and they're deconstructing and they're trying to find their way, or they're out of the church and they're kind of like you and I, where they're probably in a good place, but they're still kind of missing that sense of community and maybe feeling like, well, what happened to everybody and all of that. Like, what is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with?
I think the big thing I want people to take away is that it is okay to sit in the uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Um, Especially growing up in the background that I did, like you had your list of rules, and so it was very easy to follow. And as you come out of that, suddenly everything that you believed is up in the air and you don't have a checklist anymore. And that's very unnerving. So I think just sitting in that, like, it is okay that I'm uncomfortable. And it is okay if I don't have all the answers. It's okay if I'm still trying to figure out the answers. It's okay if I never come up with the answers. That
Yeah.
God's not going to be mad because you're not following this checklist that He didn't even create, that's totally man made. And I love the concept. One of my I feel like one of my biggest growth aspects is looking at the disciples. And after Jesus died and rose from the grave, he came to Mary and he said, I'm going to meet my disciples in Jerusalem. And then he took a second and he said, tell them to meet me in Jerusalem and tell Peter to come to Jerusalem. And you think about what Peter had just done. Peter had denied Christ 3 times. Peter had said, nope, I don't have any idea who this man is. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Could you imagine how Peter was feeling in that moment of like, yeah, he wants to see everyone but me.
Mhm.
That's how I would feel of like, I just let God down big time.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can do to let God down. You cannot go too far to have him not want to meet you in Jerusalem. And then when you're in Jerusalem and you do appear, it is okay for you to be like, I need to see the scars. I
Mhm.
need to see the scars because I need the proof. And when
Mhm.
we look at the examples that the disciples leave us, like, it's astounding. And so it is okay to sit in the uncomfortable, in the not knowing, in the needing proof. And it is okay to sit in that space. And God's not mad at you for sitting there. So I think
Mm.
that's like the biggest takeaway that I want to get people.
I love that. And I love that we were able to have this conversation today. You are such a lovely human being, and I am so glad that we met.
Me,
And oh my gosh, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. And you guys, please check out the link that we will provide in the show notes for the Amazon link for her books, and go and support Kathy's books and her work there and follow her on social media and give her all the love. Thank you so much, Kathy, for coming on.
thank you so much for having me. I loved this. This was fantastic.
Wait, wait, wait. Before you stop listening, I just have one thing to say. This is the boring part, guys. It's the legal jargon. Just wanted to make a disclaimer that anything you hear in this episode is all alleged. As you know, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Although we do believe victims and we support survivors and believe their stories, we do have to be careful with accusing people. Thank you so much for listening.